this is Amanda from Rise and Procrastinate doing my first design team video for Kat Scrappiness, and today I'm going to be showing you how to use some larger dies on a mini slimline card. So I'm starting off here with the 5x7 Foliage Frame Die, and I cut it out and I stuck it on my sticky mat that I keep inside my Tim Holtz platform, and I kept the inner pieces in just so things wouldn't slide around while I'm doing some ink blending. Which is also why I stuck it on the sticky mat. So I'm using some various colors of Distress inks here, and I have the names popped up on the screen for your convenience. So you don't really have to worry about the blending so much here because they're just kind of random colors. I mean, you don't want to make mud, but I'm just talking about the smoothness of the blending. You don't have to worry so much about that because once we pop out the die here, it's not really going to matter so much how they're blended. And you'll see what happens when I pop out the die when I'm done. So it is going to look like a bit of a hot mess here until I do pop out all the excess paper. As you can see, I chose a variety of fall colors because I am making a Thanksgiving card, as you saw in the sneak peek at the beginning of the video. I did go back and forth between a few different colors because I felt like some of them got lost. This carved pumpkin wasn't a color that I originally intended on using, but once I laid down the crackling campfire, I realized that I really wanted a more orangey color than an orangey red like the crackling campfire is. So I did, at the last minute, decide to bring in the carved pumpkin to get more of an orangey color instead of the orangey red. I am going to bring in some fired brick here, which is obviously going to give me more of a red color. So after I did this, I did go back in with the carved pumpkin and the fossilized amber to give me more of those orange and yellow tones because I felt like the red was really taking over at this point after adding that fired brick. I felt like I needed more carved pumpkin and fossilized amber to get the yellow and the orange tones that I really wanted. So I'm going to mess with this for a little bit, but in the end I feel like it was worth the time to do it. So here I am coming in with that fossilized amber after I got done with the carved pumpkin. And then once I'm done with this, I believe I'm just going to add a little bit more, just one more color of, which is going to be Vintage Photo, just to bring in a little bit of brown, which I feel is necessary in the fall colors. And then this panel will be done. Yep. And the Vintage Photo, I came in with a really light hand. So it looks like I'm really going into that ink pad a lot, but when I come to my panel, I'm just barely brushing it on. I just want a little hint here and there. I don't want to make a muddy mess, but I do want a little bit of brown because when you look at fall leaves, there are some brown colors. I mean, they're dying off the tree and falling on the ground. So I did really want some brown in there. All right, so this is done. We're gonna take it off, and as you can see, these colors look much prettier and not so much of a hot mess. And then I did add a little bit of Perfect Pearl and water spray. I just make this in a little bottle. And I'm just gonna show you this. I'm trying to show you the shimmer and the light. Sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. It's just kind of a hit or miss thing for me. So now I'm bringing in a little bit older die from Kat Scrappiness. This is the Forest for the Trees Slimline Die. I'm not going to use that frame die, but I am going to use the hill and the trees, just a part of it, obviously, but not all of it, because I'm not making a slimline card. I'm making a mini slimline card. Which this is the first time I've ever made a mini slimline card, but I'm stepping out of my box here. So I'm sticking this to my sticky mat as well, and I'm coming in with antique linen and the mini blender brushes from Kat Scrappiness. And I really like these mini blender brushes. I've never had a set of mini blender brushes like this before, or mini detail blender brushes, but I really like these and I can see a lot of potential with them. So I'm not going to show you the blending of all of these trees because it does get rather tedious, but I did zoom in here for you so you can kind of see what I'm doing. I'm just shading either side of the tree just to give it a little bit more dimension. And once I got done with the antique linen, I decided that that really wasn't the really wasn't the color that I wanted to use for birch trees, but I felt like it gave a good foundation. So when I got done with this, I decided to come in with some frayed burlap, and you're going to see that here in a minute because I just showed these two trees, I believe, and then cut it off. And sorry that my camera is going in and out of focus. I have to turn off the autofocus when I come in real close like this, especially with paintbrushes or any kind of blender brushes, any brush that sticks up close to my camera lens. Basically, it wants to focus on the end of the brush instead of on what I'm working on. So now here I'm coming in with that frayed burlap and just giving it a little bit more darker color, and I feel like this gives it more dimension too. So I'm just going to do a couple of these trees and show you what's going on here, and then we will move on to the next project because I am not going to show you, or the next step, not the next project. I'm not going to show you all of this. So as you can see, this is definitely darkening up the edges, and I feel like the frayed burlap was a better choice. But I think if I would have just went in with the frayed burlap, I don't know that it would have looked, I don't think I would have came out with the same outcome. I think that this really looks good with both colors. Alright, so once I got done here, I decided that I wanted to add some color to the bottom, and I do believe this is supposed to be a snowy hill, but because I'm doing a fall and it doesn't really snow much here in the fall where I am, I decided to do a grass hill instead. So I don't need this whole panel here, so I just figured out what part I needed or what part I wanted to use, and I'm just going to ink blend that part. Now, when I first started, I decided to go all the way across, and then I'm like, hey, you don't need this whole thing. So then I realized that I only need to go where the parts that I had obviously covered up the trees. So I started off with, oh goodness. That new green color. I'm drawing a blank here. Rustic Wilderness on the bottom, and then I did Mowed Lawn towards the top. Totally drawing a blank there. And I don't feel like there's a ton of difference in the color here, but you can see that the top is a little bit lighter than the bottom. And I did come in at the last minute here and just darken up the edges of that bottom so you can see that there's a little bit more difference in the color. So I did use the Mini Slimline Reverse Scallop die, which is new from Kat Scrappiness, and that is what's going to frame out my Mini Slimline card here. So I am just holding that back piece, the forest for the trees part, behind there, and just figuring out where I needed to cut and make that smaller. And then for this part, I think it might have been easier to leave this attached to the frame and just cut my frame smaller on this foliage die, but I decided to cut all the leaves off, and so I could arrange them how I wanted to. But this, you're gonna see me struggle with this, so we'll talk about this here in a minute. But it worked out in the end, but it was a little bit of a struggle. I think if I would have left it on the frame and just cut the frame small enough to fit behind the scallop die, I think that might have been easier. So I used the frame and placed it on the card base, how I would glue it down so it's even on all edges, and then I did tiny little pencil marks so I know where to glue this forest for the trees die down, because I don't want to glue my frame down yet. I didn't want to glue the forest for the trees die to my frame because I'm still going to put the leaves behind the frame. So I figured it was just easier to mark the placement and glue this down flat. That's what worked for me. If you have another way, go ahead and do it that way, but that's what seemed to work best for me. So I've got this glued down flat to my card base now, and then we're going to tackle these trees. Oh, and my little trick here, I didn't get enough glue on a couple of these parts, so I just took a little piece of scrap paper, put a little dab of glue on it, and then I rub it underneath where I didn't get the glue, and that just puts a little glue behind those parts that I did not get it on. So now I'm taking some score tape and putting it on this reverse scallop die, and this was kind of a pain because the score tape stuck to my hands while I was trying to put the leaves on. I thought that this would make it easier for me to put the leaves on, just so it had something to stick to, but the little parts where I cut the leaves off from the die, they weren't very long, So I was having issues sticking them on and having them stick out from the frame where I wanted them to stick out without being tucked behind the frame too far. So as you can see, I'm struggling. So this is where I said that maybe if I would have cut the frame that they were stuck on, the 5x7 frame where they were stuck on, if I would have just cut that thin enough and just adhered it behind this frame and just cut it down to size so it was on a mini slimline, because the 5x7 foliage frame is obviously 5x7. If I would have cut it down and just cut the frame thin enough to go behind this, that might have been easier. I don't know. Maybe I'll try that next time I decide to do something like this. But anyway, it all worked out. As you can see, I got them all on there. I cut a lot of my fussing around out so you didn't have to sit there and watch all of that. But I did want to leave enough of it in there to show you that there might have been a better way to do this. But I think it still looks good in the end. I got it figured out, but I think there might have been a better way to do this. So now I'm just going to line this up and stick that all down. And then we're going to tackle the sentiment when I get this done here in a second. So for my sentiment, I did choose the Happy Days. Please tell me that is right. Yes, the Happy Days stamp set. So I chose Happy Thanksgiving from that. Now the Happy Days stamp set is a little bit older. It's from a past release, but it has all kinds of sentiments that you can make, like Happy Birthday, Happy Thanksgiving, Happy Mother's Day, Happy Father's Day. You know, it's a good set to have around. So I'm just using my anti-static powder tool and stamping this in VersaMark, and then I chose Hero Arts Gold Embossing Powder to emboss that. And I did heat set that off screen. So we're just going to throw the embossing powder on now, and then you will see that my card is finished. Ta-da! All right, so I did dig out some of the brown hearts from the Gingerbread Village sprinkle set. So it's got some gingerbreads and some sprinkles and a bunch of stuff, and I just felt that the brown hearts went really well with this card. So just to finish it off, I did dig out some of those. And then now my card is finished. I hope that you enjoyed the card for today. The links for the products will be in my description box below if you're watching this on the Kat Scrappiness channel or my channel. If you're on the blog, they will be below the video. As always, have a great day.